Welcome back to Maximum Production, the Holstein Friesian New Zealand podcast about everything to do with cows. I'm Amelia, and today I'm joined by Brian Carscadden from Ontario, Canada. Brian is the Executive Senior Manager at Blondin Sires Inc., and he's no stranger to the show ring. His judging career spans over 20 years and has taken him to more than 35 countries. He's judged some of the biggest shows around the world, including the Royal Winter Fair, World Dairy Expo, and the Swiss Expo. And in January, he'll be stepping into the ring as the official Holstein Friesian judge for the 2026 New Zealand Dairy event. So today we're just going to talk to Brian about his judging philosophy and what he's looking forward to at dairy events. So welcome, Brian.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on with you here tonight, and I'm looking forward to coming to New Zealand in January.
Yeah, it's been a while since you've been over here, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's been, I don't know, maybe 2012, maybe 10 to 15 years, 12 years, something like that.
So from what I've seen, you've judged dairy event previously, and that was back in 2012. It'll be 14 years. Yeah, way too long. Got to come back. We always start with the same question in the podcast, and that's tell us about your background and how you got to where you are today. So you said 20 years of judging, but there's a lot more behind that, I'm sure.
Yeah, so I grew up on a Holstein farm, was pretty active in 4-H. At the age of about 12, I went with a neighbor to a show just over the border in Quebec. I was 12 years old, and I didn't really know anything about showing cows. And I walked around the cow barns. We were there showing sheep, actually. And we walked around the cow barns, and I was totally taken by these strings of show cows, and I just really wanted to be a part of that. And my parents supported that, and I was in 4-H then the next couple of years. And then my parents sold the farm when I was 15, and I thought it was a really bad thing at the time. But as it turned out, I probably wouldn't have had the career and opportunities that I've ended up having. 4-H was a good thing for me. I was able to compete and show a calf and start to clip and learn how to fit animals and learn what good animals are supposed to look like. And with that, I began to travel, and I became a cattle fitter, traveled all over the world, fortunately. And I think my first time in Australia was in 1990 at the very first Dairy Week, as a matter of fact. I've been back to Australia quite a few times since, obviously, but I was going to university at the same time as well in Guelph, and I graduated in 1994 with my Bachelor of Science, and I started working for United Breeders, which turned into CMEX a few years later, and worked at CMEX up until February 2021. And today I'm with Blondin Sires since February 2021. So my career has spanned quite a while now, I guess. I'm getting older, but certainly, or more experienced, I'm supposed to say, right?
Yes, more experience.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned 4-H, so that's a very foreign term to New Zealanders out there. Do you just want to explain a little bit what 4-H is?
Yes, the 4-H's are hands, heart, health. Now I can't remember the fourth one.
Is it head?
I don't remember. We could have a little contest, let everybody guess. But yeah, so it is a youth program that is predominantly it can be for different species. There's dairy clubs, there's beef clubs, there's sheep clubs, there's goat clubs, there's pig clubs. There's all kinds of different things that you can get involved with as a youth. It's predominantly just farm kids that get involved. They have regular meetings where they learn things. If you're in the dairy side of things, you learn how to feed dairy animals, you learn how to show dairy animals, how to clip dairy animals, how to breed dairy animals. If you're in the pig club, you're learning all that with pigs, of course. It's a large part of the youth landscape in Canada. It's a great opportunity for kids to get to know one another, to meet kids from other areas. They usually have a project calf that they start with in the spring and follow right through up until November at the Royal Winter Fair. This past year at the Royal Winter Fair, there was 360 kids exhibited there. They had all qualified to be there. It's a huge competition in many of the counties, and it's just a special thing where all these kids come to downtown Toronto. A portion of them never been off their farm or away from their hometown. And so going to the big city and being right downtown at the Royal Winter Fair is a big event. And a lot of these kids really look forward to that all year. And it's quite a show. If you ever have the opportunity to see it, It's called the Toronto Dominion Classic. That's a bank that sponsors it now, and it's really a big event. It's been going on. I exhibited when I was 15, so I don't know if it's 50 years old now, but it's pretty darn close to that. And it happens every year in November, and it's a big event. So that's 4-H in a nutshell. But basically, it's youth programs is what it is meant to be.
From that judging experience that you've had, what would be the highlight so far in your judging career?
I guess probably if I had to name one single show, it'd be 2008, the Holstein Friesians at World Dairy Expo. It was the first year that Canadian cattle were allowed to cross the border and come back to that show. They weren't allowed to cross the border for 5 years because of foot and mouth disease in Canada. There were some cases of it, so the border was closed for about 4 or 5 years. 2008 was the biggest show to date that year. I think it was 540 head over 2 days. It was a tremendous show. The atmosphere is electric, and if you grow up loving dairy cows, loving the great dairy cows, it's an absolute thrill to be in the middle of the ring and be an honor to be selected by your peers to place their animals at a show like that at the highest level. So that would probably be the highlight. And after that, I would say just the opportunities I've had to travel all over the world and meet lots of different people, see lots of great cows. One of the things I often talk about is that I'm old enough now where people can talk about a cow in the modern day era, and I've probably seen her in the flesh. There's not too many cows in the last 50 years that I have not seen in the flesh. Of course, a lot of people there's a lot of people that only get to see pictures. I've seen many of them. The majority of them, there might be the odd one here or there, but if there's a famous cow, I have probably been close to her at some point. Yeah, in the last 50 years.
That's pretty amazing, really, when you think about how many cows that are out there and that are showing, and that you've had this incredible opportunity to go out and see so many of them. We're such a small nation at the bottom of the world. There's people here that just dream of being able to go over, me being one of them, to go over and see like World Dairy Expo or like the Royal Winter Fair and things like that, because the vast size of those kind of shows compared to anything that we have here within New Zealand is so extreme. If you go back to the show, was it 2008, when you were judging over there, like how large were your classes that you were judging? Like how many animals?
Actually, they were anywhere from the smallest class would have been maybe 15. The largest class was the junior 2-year-old class, and I think it was 58 junior 2-year-olds were in that class. So it was a big class.
Wow. Whereas we're lucky in our in-milk classes to get kind of half a dozen. Like dairy events normally an exception because people travel from all over to get to dairy event, but your regional shows especially are a lot smaller. And I know it would be the same over there as well. Your regional shows are a lot smaller than these large, Royal Dairy Expo, Royal Winter Fair. Like, these are the top shows in the world that are happening, and the same with like Swiss Expo. But I think even looking at it from the perspective of those more regional shows over there, you're still getting a large number of entries. And I think that just shows the enjoyment that people get out of showing over there. Whereas here in New Zealand, it's very specific to the people that you see in the show ring. So we don't see as many people throughout our country doing it. But we don't have as many pedigree stock and pedigree breeders potentially here as what you have over there.
Yeah, and I think the other dividing factor that we see in North America, specifically at World Dairy Expo and the Royal, is there's a lot of trade. There's a lot of money being spent. We have a lot of people in the business that are financially well off, that love to compete. They love to show cows, and they like to win. When you have 3 or 4, 5, 6 different entities that all want to win, then the price of everything goes up. And at the end of the day is what the majority of people that show World Dairy Expo, they have that dream to sell an animal for a lot of money. Or maybe they have the dream to win that show and her offspring be worth a lot of money. That's where World Dairy Expo and Royal Winter Fair set themselves apart from all the rest of the world, because you have that ability to merchandise. Yeah, there's an expense to show your animals there, but if you win those shows or if you do well, there is an opportunity to capitalize, either by selling your animal or selling offspring. And yeah, it's a pretty lucrative business. It can be a very risky business. People then start to buy animals prospecting and thinking, wow, if I pay this much for this animal, I can double my money in the next week. And then that doesn't happen, and they've overspent or they've overpaid for that animal thinking that they're going to resell it. So it's really a lot different. Even when you go to Europe, I was at the All Japan show in October, countries that have really good shows, but there still isn't the kind of trade that we see at World Dairy Expo and the Royal Winter Fair. It's quite impressive, actually, and that just lends to the enthusiasm and the breeders wanting to breed better ones and wanting to breed ones that could potentially be sold or win at those big shows, because it can be lucrative. Not because of the prize money. The prize money sucks. That's not why you do it. And you pay an entry fee, and you're lucky if you didn't sell anything, that show's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you a lot of money to go to either of those shows. When we take a string of cattle to World Dairy Expo, the price we say is around $4,000 per animal to have them. To truck from Quebec to there, it's a 2-day event. It's about the cows are on the truck for probably 20 to 25 hours. There are cattle that come from either end of Canada to World Dairy Expo. Those cattle are on the truck for 36 hours. It's really, really hard on the cattle, but that's how important these shows are. People will do it. So yeah, it's a different animal for sure.
And I think that's where you mentioned before about the prize money's not really worth it. And I think that's a bit of a misconception to those people in New Zealand that look at it being like, well, they must get so much money over there. Whereas a lot of our smaller regional shows have prize money or prizes and things like that. Whereas Dairy Event's our biggest show and it doesn't have any prize money. It's just getting that first place trophy is what you get out of it and that pretty ribbon. And I think that's where a lot of people think they do it in North America because there's so much money that you can get for it. But as you said, they don't think about how much it actually costs you to get there. And people are traveling from all over North America to get to these shows.
All over. And, Madison is a big city, but the hotels know when World Dairy Expo is happening and they jack their prices up very high. And yeah, it's very expensive to go there. Very expensive.
I know Fielding's a little place, but if you want to stay in Fielding for the week of Dairy Event, you need to book the year before because there's just not that many motels there for people to use. Palmerston North, 20 minutes down the road. But if you've got animals at the show and you want to stay nearby, you've got to think, I need to book a year in advance almost, which I would say any of your guys that are looking at it that way and want to do that, they would possibly be looking at the same thing, booking far enough in advance. You talked about it a little bit before, but how does it feel to be invited back to judge at NZ Dairy Event?
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. Everybody, I tell them I'm going back to New Zealand. They said, "Oh, that's my favorite country." I've only been there twice. The last time, obviously, was 2012, so we're talking 14 years ago. My memory of it isn't great. I hardly remember yesterday that well. I do remember it was quite a nice show, and I do remember the champion cow was a cow that I really admired. I thought that she could be competitive in North America or any of the big countries that I've traveled to. She was a really good cow. I remember the Supreme competition was an interesting thing. The other thing I remember, and I don't know if they still do it, the interbreed show where you have all the breeds competing together. And I thought that was really, really interesting. I judged it with all the other judges, and you had to hand a ballot in for each class. Does that still happen? Does that still go on?
It's changed a little bit now. Some of especially our calf classes were getting a little bit too big to fit in the ring. So now the interbreeds is just the champion from junior, intermediate, and senior. So all of the champions from the individual breeds just line up. Same as what they do at IDW.
Okay, so you don't do it class by class anymore.
No, not anymore. I think that made the show almost too long.
The other thing I remember is how they lined all the calves at the one side of the ring, and then they would read off the ballots, and the calves would move forward accordingly as their names were spelled off, and maybe some never moved forward. Maybe some kept moving a lot because they were always in first place by the other judges, and it was almost like a horse race. It was a really interesting way to do it. I enjoyed it. I do remember that.
Yeah, so Dairy Event's the only show in New Zealand that's changed it. When you go to the smaller or more regional shows now, we still do that. So Waikato show happens in October and it gets to the interbreed class and they all go and line up at the back and they'll call each one out. It's always entertaining when you're sitting around other people and they'll hear one judges and they're like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then the next judge will be very different. And then they'll be like, oh, what was that guy looking at? And it's like, well, he likes a different type of cow, or which I think is a great thing about interbreeds. It's actually really giving people an opportunity to look at all breeds together. Do you not have interbreed champions?
World Dairy Expo has a supreme champion heifer and a supreme champion cow, so it happens there. The Royal Winter Fair does as well; they have it as well. And it just depends on the local shows and the championship shows. Some of them do. It just depends if the other breeds are at that show or not. Too. A lot of the time, they have their own shows, so there's only one breed at the regional shows. But they'll do it when we have it, and when you go to the UK, they always have kind of supreme champions over there as well. So it is commonplace for sure.
So are you planning on spending a bit more time in New Zealand around the show, or is it going to be a bit of a fleeting visit?
Well, as you know, I was I was only going to Australia and was heading home on the Saturday. So I've changed my flights and I will come to New Zealand on the Sunday. And I guess go home on Thursday. So no, I'm not going to spend. I'll already be gone 10 or 12 days by that point. So I better get back.
Understandable.
Yeah,
well,
but I'd like to.
Disappointing that you don't get to actually go and visit some of these breeders that you're going to see.
Yeah, if it was just New Zealand I was coming to, then by all means I would definitely stay longer for sure.
I guess that's the hard part with IDW and Dairy Event taking place so close together. It's great for us that we can get judges that are coming to fill in and do both shows. It makes it a lot easier and cheaper for us to get judges down here, but it does make it a lot harder for you guys to actually fit in anything outside of the show when, it's a full day's worth of travel each way to get either to Australia or New Zealand. And when you've got a full-time job to get back to, you kind of can't take all the time in the world off, but hopefully you'll be able to come back again and actually just visit the country.
I'll make those plans another time.
I'm sure there's a lot of breeders throughout New Zealand that would love for you to come and just have a walk through their herd. And I'm sure there's some herds you'd really love to see.
Yeah, no, I would, and I'll do that another time for sure.
So you made a comment on the cow that you gave the Supreme Champion to last time you were here. How do you think overall New Zealand cattle will stand up to what you've seen since 2012 throughout the world?
Well, I think the style of cow that is winning today has certainly changed in the last 20 years. When I think back to when my judging career started, a cow with a big stylish frame would often get a lot more looks than a smaller, really good uddered cow. And I think that has changed and evolved quite a bit in the last 20 years. I work with young judges quite a bit, and I can remember when I started judging, it wasn't uncommon to see the best udder cow in the class below 5th place. And today, I tell all the young judges, I said the first thing you look for in your class is your best udder. Because the breed has evolved so much. Our udders are so good now that your best udder cow better be in your top 2 or 3 placings. And I think at most shows now around the world, really, we've evolved in that regard. There was a time 20, 25 years ago where a lot of classes were judged with a measuring stick, and the tallest and the longest and the biggest would often be at the top of the class. And so I always tell my young judges, if we look at the classification scorecard in most countries worldwide, doesn't matter what system they're using, feet and legs and udders probably consist of anywhere between 60 and 70% of your scorecard. And so when you're judging, you better be looking for that. Certainly there are countries, I think New Zealand and Australia, grazing countries, Ireland, I think of some of those kind of countries. Maybe there's a little more emphasis put on chest width and body depth and things like that. Not necessarily stature, but maybe just more overall body mass. And so I think the breed has really evolved. This is a bold statement to make. I would say 20 years ago, the Jersey breed was far and away the better udder breed. And I think the tide has turned. I think now the Holstein breed is a far superior udder breed than the Jerseys are. And that's no slight towards the Jersey breed. I love Jerseys. I own Jerseys. But, when you visit a commercial herd of Holsteins, their udders are consistently better than what a commercial herd of Jersey udders would be, just up and down the road. And I think that's just a lot of things. I think breeders have paid more attention to it. Classification systems have put more emphasis. AI companies have put more emphasis on good udders, and I think genomics has really changed the game as well. I think that there is a vast number of Holsteins compared to Jerseys in the system. So our reliability of the numbers is a lot better. And the Holstein breeders are probably a little more confident in the genomic numbers to really use them. And udders can be transmitted, and it's quite a reliable number that you have. And classifiers typically score udders pretty accurately. A good udder is a good udder, and they know what they're looking at. Or feet and legs, sometimes, especially in cubicle situations or in where animals are housed in loose housing, or tie stalls for that matter in North America, it's difficult to accurately analyze your feet and legs and be consistent with it. So udders have come a long way, and I think that's what I'll see when I come back. And I remember the cow I won with in 2012 was a big bodied cow, not necessarily a tall cow, but she was a very good uddered cow and just very balanced and angular and dairy. And I'm sure that what we're looking for today will be even more, in front of me when I judge here this time. Definitely.
I think you've kind of highlighted the main part there being that the stature and that chest width. I've been with the association now 7 years. So even just 7 years ago to now, looking at what people were taking to dairy event has changed. So you don't see those as big as stature animals, but you definitely are seeing a lot more of those wider chest width animals and those deeper body animals. And our jerseys here in New Zealand are still very strong, but I think a lot of overseas people struggle when they come to New Zealand because our jerseys here are very small. And that was part of trying to bring size down, and that affected BW and things like that. I noticed this year when I was out classifying that I wasn't doing jerseys, but when we're doing the TOP work on the sire proving heifers, some of the jerseys there have actually come back up in stature now. So people are actually seeing that, okay, that one needs to grow, but this one needs to shrink. So the Friesians are coming down and the jerseys are going up a little bit. But definitely the Friesians, I would agree that that view has changed. And it's really interesting when you look at the cows that are winning over in North America and things like that. They're not these big, tall, lanky things anymore. And we have cows here in New Zealand that there's still a couple of them that you'll see in the show ring because that's just the type of cow that the breeder likes. And those kind of cows used to always be, as soon as we got an overseas judge over here, the overseas judge would put them kind of further up the line. But now seeing a lot more has changed and they're looking for that balanced cow. Definitely want to see from head to tail that she's balanced all the way through. So I don't think it's a bad thing that things have changed. Everyone over here says legs don't produce milk. So, bringing that stature down a little bit so you don't have to fill her legs.
No, for sure. And at the same point, I mean, there are some minimums there should be because the Holstein breed is still the Holstein breed. If we want to milk jerseys, then milk jerseys, and I think there is a fine line and a balance there that a lot of people struggle with sometimes. And in fact, I see it in Australia the last 4 or 5 years. I've been out on farms, visiting farms after the show, wondering why this cow wasn't at the show, or this cow, or this cow, or this cow. And there's still this misconception that these tall cows are the ones they need to take to the show. And so I think it would be interesting to go farm to farm before a show like IDW and say, okay, well, why are you taking that one to the show? Why aren't you taking these ones over here? Because sometimes I think there's part of that going on too, for sure.
You don't really know what the judge is going to want or look for until they get in the ring. So it's important to be showing animals that you think are a good representation of what you want to milk and what you want to breed. And I think it's quite important for people to really focus on that now. And I think that's where it's come in, that people are realizing this is more the type of cow I want to milk. And so that tends to be what we're seeing more often in the show ring now, which is great. Bigger variety of cows is what we like to see.
For sure.
So we mentioned before you've been a judge for many, many years. And you've judged at some very, I guess, prestigious shows throughout the country. And as you said, you've seen every famous cow you can think of. You've seen her in the flesh. So how do you stay impartial when you're going in and you're judging these cows that you have potentially seen somewhere else, or you know that they have got this reputation behind them of being the top cow at this show or this? How do you stay impartial when you're looking at that?
That's a really good question. The subconscious is a crazy thing. I'll have other judges say to me, "Well, I don't care. I can block it all out. I don't know anything." Well, yeah, you do. It's still in the back of your mind. But what you have to do is be true to yourself. And when you're in the middle of the ring looking at these animals, just analyze them like it's the first time you've ever seen them. That's what I tell all the young judges. It's easier said than done because of that subconscious. But at the end of the day, if you want to be asked to judge more shows and give an honest opinion, that's what you're asked to do. And if there's a great cow that you know has won a great show somewhere, and you're probably going to know because you would have seen her, and you recognize her, but if that's not her day, then it's not her day, and you have to be impartial and win with the cows that deserve to win on the day, and that's what you're asked to do. So just don't cave into the pressure. If an unknown cow needs to beat a famous cow on the day, then it has to be done. There's going to be another day for that cow to go out again sometime. So yeah, that's what I would say.
I think it's also important that you're always going to get new cows coming into the ring. Yeah, she's won at a previous show, but then the cow next to her might not have been at that show. So it is hard to distinguish between what you're looking at and what you're expected to say. But actually looking at it like, well, I've never seen this cow before, and actually she stands out to me for XYZ. I guess going on from that, your reasonings, how do you find getting your reasonings across, and how important do you think it is that when people are getting their reasonings across, they're clear and concise in what they're saying?
I think it's really important. Of course, you have to get the placings right. That's number one, or right in your mind. But then it's your job to stand up the microphone and convince everybody that you're right and have confidence and stand up for what you believe in. But at the same point, give clear and concise reasons so that you're not getting asked 100 questions afterwards or putting doubt into the mind of the people that didn't win. Because judging is a pretty fickle thing. You're everybody's best friend before the show, and then after the show, not everybody's quite as friendly as what they were before. But if you can stand at the microphone and give accurate, concise reasons, then they really shouldn't be mad at you afterwards because you've given your honest opinion. And as long as what you're saying is accurate, then you should be okay. I've been fortunate most of my career. I've always been able to give as accurate reason as possible, and I think that really helps. I will often talk to lower placing animals in the class just privately to let them know what it is about their animal that didn't appeal to me on that day. Otherwise, she would have been higher if she was better in her leg or better in her forerunner or better in her rump. And then that person leaves the ring and they have an idea exactly why they weren't in the top 5 or 6. And I think that helps. And it doesn't take very long. And you can be nice about it. You don't have to be mean about it. You can just go about it in a way that is positive and diplomatic and let them know where their animal can improve for the next show. And I think that helps as well.
It must be hard when you're going in and you're judging these classes where there's like 15, 20, or 30 animals in there, to make sure that you're giving every animal the respect of looking at it and making sure that you're really analysing it. How do you make sure that you, without taking 3 hours to judge a class, because I think everyone will fall asleep, but how do you make sure that you are giving everyone that time of day as you make your way around to, you're not just going in and being like, these are my 5 and I'm done, I'm not going to look at the rest of them?
Yeah, no, and I think that's really important. I mean, everyone's paid the same amount of money, spent the same amount of time to be in that ring, and they all deserve that respect to be looked at in a fair and reasonable manner. There are certain ones in a class that are easily going to be in the top 3 or 4. Those ones are obvious. You really don't have to look at them all that long. Sometimes there's some close placings. You need to look a little longer. Sometimes there's animals in the class that are going to be on the bottom. Like it's just that's the way it is. You get animals that for whatever reason don't belong in the top group, but they still deserve your time and your effort to look at them and analyze them. And I think it's really important. There has been criticism of judges in the past for really not spending enough time looking at the ones that are at the bottom. Callum McKinnon is a great judge, is a mentor to me. And somebody said to me one day, he says, Callum can make the person in last place feel like they won the class. And that's part of his personality. That's part of who he is. And I try to do that as best I can, but I'm not as good at it as he is. I don't know anybody that is. But it is important because you want them to come back to show again, especially when they're young children or young kids as well. You want to be very positive with them. And I always try to be positive. I stay away from negatives, and I think that's really important.
And I think that's a really good takeaway for people, is to avoid the negative. Like, I've heard of things that some people have said to young ones, either in the ring or after they've even left the ring. And it's like, could you just have kept that to yourself? Like, that might be how you feel about that animal, but this is a child that's showing, and it is really important to stay positive, to encourage them, especially with a country like ours where there's not a huge lineup of people trying to get in the ring here. So you're wanting to encourage any kid or any young person that you can to be involved. So I think it's really important. Would you recommend to judges to place the entire class if you've got that many animals in the class?
Yeah, absolutely. Unless there's a prearranged situation where I talked about the big youth show at the Royal Winter Fair. There's so many in the classes that they do heats. So they'll bring in, say there's supposed to be 85 fall calves. Well, they'll bring in 3 heats and bring back the top 30 for a final. So in that situation, there's only 30 of them that get placed, and the rest of them are excused during their heats. So if there's something already preset, there's not much you can do about it. But otherwise, yeah, every animal needs to be placed to the bottom.
Well, I don't think you're going to get about 85 calves in the class here in New Zealand, but you might get 20 to 30, which will be great to see. We do have quite a lot of young ones that are involved, so it's really neat. And yeah, it's always great. I think it's always great when a judge actually makes the effort to place everyone, just to kind of, I know he's not going to call out the reasonings for all of them, but it does give them an outline of, if I compare my calf to that one, what's different between them that might be more desirable.
For sure.
So you've kind of covered it, but we'll go into a little bit more depth about this. What do you see as some of the benefits of being part of the judging community other than getting to see the world?
I guess there's a professional level to it, I guess, where there's a level of respect amongst the judges. And I think, before you become a judge, it's pretty easy to be critical on the outside of the ring until you step in the ring yourself and you're part of that judging community. There's just that camaraderie amongst many of the judges. There's that professionalism. There's that ability to learn from the judging committee. I've judged for a long time. I've judged in a lot of countries. That doesn't mean I have to stop learning. The breed has evolved, and as a judge, you need to evolve with the breed and with the dairy cow. Part of that evolution is staying in touch with the other judges, watching what the other judges are doing. I do a lot of judging schools where I help to teach and coach and the young judges and try to build programs that allow our judges to get the best training they can have so that they're not being put into a position they're not ready for. We've seen that time and time again where young judges will be asked to judge a show that they're just not quite ready yet in terms of experience. And if the show doesn't go well, it definitely doesn't help their judging career going forward. So just being part of that whole judging community and that level of respect you have amongst your peers, I think it's really important, and I think it's so valuable as well.
So you're working with Braden Schroeder. He is your associate judge at Dairy Event this year. Braden's associate director on the Holstein Friesian board, and he has been showing since he was pretty much in diapers. Braden's a real advocate for the Holstein Friesian breed and young ones getting involved. How important do you think it is to take on these roles of an associate judge when you are coming up through the judging scene?
That's an excellent question, and it's something that I'm quite passionate about. I've only been an associate judge one time in my judging career because I've only been asked one time, and that was in 2006 at the Royal Winter Fair. I was the associate judge for Mike Deaver, and it was the first time the Royal ever had an associate judge. And what that did for me was it gave me the experience, first of all, to be in the center of one of the greatest shows with one of the greatest judges at that time and still today. A guy that I had a lot of respect for, and is certainly a mentor to me. What I learned that day was that, hey, I like the same kind of animals as this guy does. Wow, maybe I can do this. And it gave me a lot of confidence going forward. And that's when my judging career really took off, was after that. And I judged a lot of shows in the next 3, 4, 5 years. And during that time, I had associate judges work with me. And many of them have went on to judge the biggest shows in the world, not because I taught them, but because they were able to have that experience and it was a stepping stone for them. And I feel strongly about it. I was asked to judge a county show here a few months ago locally, and quite often I'll say no to those kind of shows, not because I'm above it, but because I feel like someone else needs to have that experience, you know? How do they grow? How do they become the next level of judge if I'm taking that judging job away from them? I've judged that show 15 years ago. I don't need to do it again. They were very persistent. They said, everyone really wants you and blah, blah, blah. So I said, okay, I will do it, but you have to get me an associate. And it has to be a young person that I can have out there with me. That'll make me feel better to have someone I can mentor and train. And so they agreed to that, and they had an associate with me, a young lady from Canada, and she was great, and she really enjoyed the experience, and it will only benefit her. And I think we need to do more and more of that. In Ontario, I'm putting something forward where I think every show above 100 cows, there needs to be an associate. And that associate can come from this list of people. And these are young people that just need that experience and that exposure and that opportunity. I think it's really important. And if you're asked to be an associate judge, by all means. And if you're young and still learning, you definitely need to do it for sure.
It's definitely a great experience just to follow someone around that has got so much knowledge when it comes to being in the ring and what they're looking for and how to talk about what they're looking for. I think especially for young ones in New Zealand, we don't get a lot of international judges coming over and doing these kinds of things. When you've got this opportunity to stand next to someone like yourself, it's just an opportunity for you to ask, if you were me, a million questions. But that's why I'm not a judge, because I would never stop asking questions. But it gives you that opportunity to clarify what they're looking at, or if you're questioning a decision that they are making, you're not telling them they're wrong, but you want more clarification into why they're making that decision. And I'm sure you'll hear it in their reasonings, but it's always good to ask that question to get more clarification.
Yeah, and sometimes as the lead judge, it's nice to have somebody else out there with that you can have another opinion, that you can bounce something off of. Sometimes you get a show where there's a lot of high level cows, and back to your part about how do you decipher that? How do you stay impartial? Well, one way to do that is to have a good associate with you that's going to help you block out your subconscious and allow you to look at them subjectively. And so I think it's really important for sure.
So, just one last question for you. Do you have any more advice? Because you've given us a lot today anyway, for any young ones getting into judging or interested in becoming a judge?
I think one of the things about being a judge is that um, one of my early experiences in my profession in 1994 was I was a mating specialist, and I would go on farms and I would look at 70, 80 cows, and we had a mating program, and my job was to analyze each of the cows and pick out three faults, enter them in the program, and then that would allow the mating program to figure out how to mate that cow from the type standpoint. And what that did for me, it taught me how to analyze cows accurately and promptly. Being able to look at a cow and know within 5 seconds where you want to change her. And so I think for a young person, that's a really good exercise. Go to your neighbor's farm, use your own farm, go to a herd and just pick out 30 cows and walk through them and pick out their three biggest faults and do it fast every time. Try and do it as fast as you can. I think that is something that can really help you once you get in the middle of the ring to really analyze things quick, and not just the faults, but also what are the three best things of each cow as well, because of course you want to be able to do that as well. The other part, if you really want to be a judge, and this sounds vain, practice your reasons. Practice, practice, practice. Record yourself. Listen to yourself. There are words you're going to say over and over and over again that you didn't even realize you used. The only way to know that is by taping yourself or video recording yourself. Um, if a young person, if you're out driving a tractor, if you're driving down the road, think of a class of animals, practice your reasons, and get comfortable on a microphone, because if you want to judge, you're going to have a microphone in your hand at some point. I was, as a young person in 4-H again, I was asked to do a lot of different speeches and different things. We were in competitions, my brother and I had a microphone in my hand from the time I was 10 years old. So that was a huge benefit to me going forward. There are people out there that are highly qualified to be judges that don't ever want to judge because they are scared to death of that microphone. And that's a fear you have to get over if you want to be a judge, for sure.
I do feel like it's the main comment we get from young ones here is, oh, yeah, I can place them, but don't ask me to get on that mic and explain it. And it's like, well, I feel like if you're confident in what your placement is, you should feel confident in explaining your reasons.
Right. And there's lots of videos of different people, qualified people giving reasons that you can watch. You can go online and whatever, World Dairy Expo, Holstein Show, Jersey Show, any of the shows over the last 10 years. I'm sure you can find lots of video of people giving reasons. Just listen to them, analyze them, practice them. Not that you need to sound like yourself, but it's definitely going to allow you the ability to understand how the reasons need to flow and how they need to sound, and how you piece it all together. And after a while, it'll just come automatic to you. And I guess that's where I'm at today when I give reasons. It's like automatic, but that's experience. That's just time. That's age. That's old age. I'm fortunate that way because it's experience.
As you said, it's taken you 20 years to get to the point where you are now, where you're really confident in what you're doing, whereas these new ones getting out there, it just shows it all comes down to getting the experience, getting out there, putting yourself out there and actually talking. You can watch the cows come into the shed one day and judge them as they come in and place them and explain it. No one else has to hear you if that's how you feel about it, but yeah.
No, for sure. Absolutely.
So we're going to leave it there for today because I'm sure Brian has more exciting things to do this evening.
Oh, no, it's good.
Thank you so much, Brian, for joining me today and sharing your insights into the world of judging and the upcoming New Zealand dairy event. It's always fascinating to hear about the experience and professionalism that goes into placing cows on show day. There's so many people out there that think that you just make a decision as they walk in and that it's that simple. It also just how important integrity and impartiality play in such a big role. So if you've got any questions about today's episode or ideas for future topics, reach out via our website, Facebook or Instagram. Thank you for listening, and I will be back next month with a new guest and a new topic. Until then, happy farming. Bye.